take number like 5, guys. Oh my god. This video is cursed. I don't know what the frick it is, but this video is cursed. So, first I kept calling 9x19 9x18 because I just watched a Makarov video. Then I filmed the whole thing without the mic connected. And then I filmed the whole thing with the camera having wiggled loose and not really aimed at me. It looked like it was far enough off, it looked really stupid. So, as you can probably guess from my little complaint here, my wine fest, I need some cheese, guys. We're doing 9mm. And this isn't a comparison video, we're featuring 9mm, 9x19, 9mm Luger, 9mm Parabellum, the Wonder 9. And I think it's only fair. It is the dominant handgun round in the world by far. If you don't count rimfire, it accounts for 20% of the ammunition sold in the world. 20% of the market. I mean, that's insane. One caliber, 20%. The next one down is 223/556 at 10%. Okay, 10%, half. And mind you, I'm pretty sure that's including military numbers. And we know how much military use 223/556 versus 9mm. I mean, yeah, they use 9mm, but how much do you shoot? You know, like the guys overseas are shooting thousands and thousands of rounds of 556, most likely, for every round of 9mm that they shoot. I mean, it's massively disproportionate, right? So, we're going to go back in time. We're going back to 1902 when George Luger, guy who came up with the Luger pistol, the P08, said, you know what, I don't like the cartridge I've designed it around. I can do better. I want a straight wall cartridge. I want something that'll fit better, more power, more reliable. I can do better. And I don't remember the name of the cartridge. It was some sort of bottleneck thing that was roughly the same case diameter, but bottleneck down to like a 7.5 or a 7.6 bullet. I can't remember exactly. It wasn't important. But he's designing this pistol. He's already created it. He's sold some. But he's going, you know what? I can do better. And he comes up with a 9mm as a derivative of that original bottleneck. So we're not starting over from scratch. It's a derivative of it. And markets this. Keep in mind, he's Austrian. He's not German. We always think of this as a German round. He's Austrian. He markets it to the U.S. Army, to the British services, and to German military, among others. He was marketing this pretty widely. But as major players, those were the three that he was pushing this to. Only the Germans took him up on it. Other places, you know, they buy some here or there, but nobody was really adopting this. The British were very focused on their revolvers. The U.S. was kind of going from, we were doing revolvers, but we were looking at autos, but mostly larger caliber. We were having issues with stopping power. Europe has different opinions on that and was a little more inclined to go along with this new round. They liked the size, they liked the form factor of the gun. It was a very cool gun. So they adopted it in time for World War I. World War I goes along. After World War I, there's more interest. Other militaries, other police departments go, hey, that actually worked out. That wasn't such a bad gun. That wasn't such a bad caliber. It did the job. Gets a little more adoption. We're starting this trend, okay? Right from the end of World War I, you see the steady progression of 9mm displacing other calibers. Really, the end of World War II is where it took off, particularly when NATO got formed and adopted 9mm. That really clinched it, I think you could say, for 9mm as a dominant round. And it just kept going. You'll see it more and more police departments continuously. It was just a constant stream. So 9x19, right? So we are specifically talking about that one. But it's worth mentioning that the 9mm size was very popular in longer rounds, shorter rounds, it continues to be. 380 is a 9mm round. There is 9mm Makarov 9x18, which for whatever reason I kept calling in the previous video version. There is like 9mm Dillon. You get a whole lot of them because the diameter works really well. Big enough that it feeds well, small enough that it feeds well. You have both directions are an issue. Easy capacity in both a single stack and double stack gun. You can do a very fat double stack. You can do a very narrow double stack. It works really, really well in the form factor of a handgun. Pressure, 35,000 psi, plus P pressure is 38.5. NATO adopted 36.5. That's enough power for most purposes, particularly with a good hollow point. That is enough energy, enough speed to do the job without being abusive to the handgun, to people's hands. Excuse me. I haven't had any coffee yet, guys. Oh. So it just works. He originally intended it to be lethal out to 50 meters. These days, I'd say you can push that a little bit. Hollow points are more effective. They don't rely quite as much on velocity. But as you lose velocity, they lose their effectiveness to the point where if you lose too much velocity, they don't expand and they don't work too well. So, I mean, maybe you can say 75 meters is still a lethal range. I mean, obviously they'll kill you further out if you get hit in the wrong spot, but effective, military effectiveness. However, hollow points have come a long way. 60s and 70s, even in the 80s, you still needed a big enough round because hollow points did not perform consistently. They had issues. So you had to figure maybe you got expansion, maybe you didn't, which is why 45 and 40 stayed popular. 40 Smith & Wesson was very popular as that intermediate diameter, and it was a very powerful round. It's got more oomph than 9 and 45, but the bullet diameter keeps the recoil sort of manageable and gives people the confidence they've got a bigger hole even if it doesn't expand. But a lot of people don't like the recoil on 40. 9mm is widely considered a very comfortable round to shoot, even for women, even for smaller frame men, even for smaller frame women. So as a universal appeal, it's got it. These days, hollow point development has basically, and guys, don't beat me up on this. We're not talking about ideal situation. We're talking about real world statistical analysis. 9mm with modern hollow points is statistically just as good at stopping the fight as 45. That doesn't mean there's no benefits or downsides or anything like that. But when you're talking statistical averages, 9mm does the job. So there's not much point in giving up capacity, taking more recoil, having a larger gun for questionable increases in performance. Unconventional bullets are also pushing the envelope. They're making 9mm definitely need that caffeine. They're making 9mm much more effective. Not so much that it is drastically increased stopping power, but that you can control the power delivered better. So, for example, I've got a fairly modern, it's an XTP, not an HST, but still a modern, popular hollow point with a Lehigh Defense bullet. Now, this is a hand load, not one of the Underwood or anything like that. But it's the Lehigh Defense 90 grain Extreme Defense. Not the Extreme Penetrator, which is really meant for self-defense against animals. But the self-defense version has a very controlled penetration in flesh. So whether you're shooting an animal or a person, it penetrates very reliably to a controlled depth. Rather than being, well, if it expanded, it does this. If it doesn't expand, it does that. If it hits a bone, it does this. The modern design doesn't care about any of that. It's very consistent because it doesn't expand when it goes through a hard material. It only expands, sorry, it doesn't even expand. It only reacts when it goes through things that are soft, liquidy, water, flesh, human or otherwise, because the fluting is pushing outward. It's pushing that material outward, away from itself. Well, that works really well. I mean, you can go look up the Lehigh Defense videos. They have some good videos on this. They run it through pretty well. But I think things like that, whether the Lehighs or others, are going to be the future. Because I think the hollow point design has kind of reached its peak. There will be incremental improvements, but the idea behind it can only go so far. And I think that what we've discovered is that with the different technology, 9mm actually can work better. Because 45, you're relying on a bigger hole. You're relying on the actual bullet itself being larger. And so when it expands, it's even larger. Well, if you're not relying on that bullet being a certain size and expanding a certain amount, why would you take the penalty in a larger gun, less ammo capacity, more recoil? I think that's all things that are going to make 9mm even more dominant. So, I think that we should look to see 9mm continue to be the dominant round. I think it will continue to steal market share from things like 9mm. It's going to steal its own market share, guys. It's going to steal market share from 357 SIG, 40 Smith & Wesson. Sad to say, 45 ACP. I love it, but I think that in the larger market, it is still going to continue to lose market share. I think that we've got at least a couple more decades of 9mm being the dominant round, and to replace it is going to take something revolutionary. It's going to be something like a 5.7 round, or I don't know, a needle gun kind of technology, something that is completely outside of the current paradigm. Because otherwise, the form factor of 9mm fits. The only thing you could possibly do to make the form factor better is to make it narrower. Because you're not going to get more in by making it shorter. That's not how magazines work. I mean, I guess you could, in the sense that if you did like a helical setup, like the Calicos, shorter could help. But in general, it's the diameter that controls your capacity. Well, if you can make a 7mm, a 5.7mm, that is just as effective, costs similarly, can't be significantly more expensive, you could have a powerful contender. But you've got to have the adoption from the manufacturers, from the gun manufacturers, the ammo manufacturers, the widespread options. And you've got to get buy-in from the shooters. It can't be something where it works in this situation, but it doesn't work well in that situation. 9mm, you can go plink at the range. You can get training rounds like simunitions and blanks and rubber bullets and all that jazz. You can get frangibles. You can get hollow points. You can get exotics. You can get, if you're that crazy and connected, you can get armor piercing stuff. There's all sorts of options. They all work. If you don't have that flexibility, I think you're never going to beat 9mm in its own game. So that is it. I really think the 9mm, as much as I would love to say 45 ACP still wins, I think 9mm is the dominant round for a reason and will continue to be. So take care, have fun, stay safe, y'all. Keep shooting whatever floats your boat. Don't let me sway you from your own favorite. If you like it, you like it. Most modern calibers work just fine. So, see you later, guys. Say hi. Oof.